The rhythmic tapping of rain against the classroom window filled the otherwise quiet room. The lesson droned on, but Ryan could barely process a single word. The fingers trembled slightly as they stared down at the small, crumpled piece of paper hidden beneath their desk. Positive. A simple word, yet it held power on them that could shake their entire world. Their stomach twisted, a sick feeling creeping up their spine. This wasn't possible. It couldn't be. They had only taken the test this morning, hidden away in the dormitory bathroom before anybody else had woken up. A single line would have meant that they could breathe. 2 lines, though. 2 lines meant their whole life was about to change. Their fingers tightened around the paper as they swallowed hard, trying to focus on the lesson, but how could they? Their heart pounded in their chest and they felt like the walls were closing in. Ryan? They jumped, eyes filling to meet the green ones that were full of concern. Izuku Midoriya. Deku leaned slightly towards them, whispering, loud enough for them to hear. Are you okay? You look really pale. Ryan forced a weak smile, shaking their head. Fine, just tired. Deku frowned, clearly not convinced, but before he could say anything else, Aizawa called the class to attention. The rest of the school day passed in a blur. Ryan couldn't focus on anything, lessons, conversations, even lunch. Their mind was consumed by one thought. What am I going to do? By the time the final bell rang, they felt exhausted, like the weight of the secret was crushing them. They needed to talk to someone. They needed to talk to him. Later that night, Ryan found themselves standing outside Midoriya's dorm room, hands clenched into fists at their sides and their stomach twisted with anxiety. But they had no choice. With a deep breath, they knocked. A shuffling sound came from inside before the door creaked open, revealing Midoriya in loose t-shirts and sweatpants. His hair was damp, likely from the recent shower, and he blinked in surprise at the sight of them. Ryan? He asked, tilting his head. What's wrong? They hesitated before stepping inside, wringing their hands together. Midoriya shut the door behind them, his concern growing. You've been acting weird all day. You know you can tell me anything, right? That was when Ryan's resolve started to crack. Their eyes stung with tears as they reached in their pocket, pulling out the test, holding it out for him. Midoriya hesitated before taking it, carefully unfolding the paper as soon as he saw the results. His breath hitched. Oh. Silence filled the room as Ryan watched 1,000 emotions flicker across his face. Shock, confusion, worry, they braced themselves for whatever came next. Midoriya's voice was barely a whisper. They nodded, their voice tightening. I took the test this morning. I don't know how it happened. I mean, I know how it happened, but... Midoriya's hand trembled slightly as he set the paper down on his desk. His freckles stood out against his pale skin as he took a deep, shaky breath. He swallowed, then met Ryan's gaze. How are you feeling? Ryan blinked, caught off guard. Out of all of the things he could have said, they hadn't expected that. He let out a weak laugh. I don't know. I'm scared, confused. I haven't really processed it yet. Midoriya nodded, running a hand through his hair. Yeah, that makes sense. He took a step closer, his eyes filled with determination despite his obvious nerves. You're not alone in this, Ryan. Tears welled up in their eyes as his words. You mean that? They asked. Of course I do. His voice was firm and unwavering. This is a lot, I know, and we're both probably freaking out, but I promise we'll figure it out together. A tear slipped down Ryan's cheek just before they quickly wiped it away. I don't know what to do, Izuku. Midoriya hesitated for a second before carefully reaching out and gently taking their hand in his. We'll take it one step at a time. First, we'll go to Recovery Girl. She might be able to explain what to expect, and then we can talk about you and what you want to do, because, well, this is your body and I support whatever decision you make. Wayne let out a shaky breath, nodding slowly. Okay. Midoriya squeezed their hands. We can tell Aizawa together. He's intimidating, but I think he'll help us, and if you're scared, we don't gotta tell anyone else. It's okay, we don't have to rush anything. Wayne felt a warmth spread in their chest. Despite the fears, despite the unknown future ahead of them, there was comfort in knowing they weren't exactly alone. Midoriya was here, and he cared. Izuku? They murmured, voice barely above a whisper. Yeah? He tilted his head. A small, shaky smile formed on Wayne's lips. Thank you. Midoriya's expression softened as he squeezed their hand again. Always. The next morning, Wayne woke up feeling like the weight of the world was on their shoulders. Sleep had been, practically impossible. Every time they closed their eyes, their mind raced with fear and doubt, even though Midoriya had been incredibly supportive. The reality of their situation was, well, it was scary, and it hadn't changed. They were still a student in UA, still in Class 1A, and expected to fight and train and survive in a world that had no place for a pregnant hero in training. By the time they dragged themselves out of bed, their stomach churned from anxiety. They barely touched their breakfast in the dormitory common area, pushing their food around with their plate while their classmates chattered around them. Midoriya sat beside them, quietly observing. He wasn't eating much either, his usual excitement about meal plans and calorie intake replaced by something quieter, more watchful. He must have noticed the way Wayne's hands trembled when they picked up a spoon, or how they kept zoning out, lost in thought. We should go to Recovery Girl after class, Midoriya murmured, only so they could hear. Wayne swallowed. Yeah, that's probably a good idea, they said softly, coughing halfway through, trying to clear their voice. They could barely speak, their mind could barely stop racing, but Aizawa walked in a moment later, signaling the start of the school day. The moment Wayne stepped into the classroom, they could feel Midoriya's eyes on them, suddenly reminding them they weren't alone. The day dragged on endlessly. Wayne barely absorbed anything from the lesson, and even in training, they found themselves more cautious, and every time they moved, a terrified thought in the back of their mind. What if I get hurt? They weren't just responsible for themselves anymore. Midoriya, of course, noticed. He didn't say anything in front of the classmates, but after training ended, he pulled them aside. Are you okay? He asked. Wayne let out a bitter laugh. I think you, already know the answer, they scoffed. Midoriya hesitated. Do you want me to come with you? To see Recovery Girl? Wayne bit their lip. Yeah, actually, I'd really appreciate it. Recovery Girl's office was quiet, and they arrived to the air full with an antiseptic and bandages. The old woman glanced up at them from her paperwork as they stepped inside. What do we have here? She asked, her voice kind but firm. Wayne took a deep breath and forced himself to speak. I need to talk to you about something personal. Recovery Girl's eyes sharpened, scanning them carefully before nodding. Alright, Midoriya, this is private. You are welcome to step outside. Wayne immediately shook their head. No, I want him here. He's involved in this. Midoriya stood a little straighter, as if the weight of the trust meant everything to him. Recovery Girl folded her hands together. Alright then, sit down and tell me what's going on. Wayne hesitated only a second before examining shakily. I'm pregnant. The words felt foreign on their tongue, as if it didn't belong to them, but now there was no taking it back. Recovery Girl didn't really react. She kind of just nodded slowly, eyes scanning Wayne carefully. I see. How far along do you think you are? Wayne swallowed hard. I don't know, I just kind of found out yesterday. Recovery girl hummed and thought before standing up and grabbing a few medical tools. Well, let's actually do a checkup. You'll need an actual doctor to confirm everything, but I could at least make sure you're doing alright. Midoriya reached and squeezed Ryan's hands as the recovery girl worked against their stomach. It was a surreal experience, one they hadn't fully processed yet. After a few minutes, recovery girl stepped back. Well, you seem healthy for now. I do strongly suggest you visit a specialist, but this isn't something to handle lightly. Ryan nodded, grabbing Midoriya's hand. Recovery girl's expression softened. Do you have a plan yet? Ryan hesitated, shaking her head. Midoriya spoke up. But whatever happens, we're together in this. Recovery girl sighed, shaking her head. You two have quite the challenge ahead of you. But I've seen my fair share of students overcome the impossible. Telling Aizawa was the next challenge. They waited after school, standing outside his office with Midoriya gripping their hand for support. Are you sure about this? Ryan whispered. Midoriya nodded. He's gonna find out eventually. Better it be from us. Taking a deep breath, Ryan knocked. Aizawa opened the door, his usual tired expression unchanged. What? Ryan swallowed their nerve, stepping inside. We need to talk to you about something serious. Aizawa studied them for a moment before sighing. Alright, sit down. Ryan sat stiffly as Midoriya sat by their side, with the words felt heavy in their mouth, almost impossible to say. But they had to. I'm pregnant. Aizawa didn't react immediately, he just sat there, staring at them before exhaling deeply. He bent the bridge of his nose as if pulling away a headache. Then after a long pause, he said, Well, that complicates things. Ryan winced. I know, I'm sorry. Don't apologize. He interrupted tiredly. His voice wasn't angry, just tired. I assume you've spoken to Recovery Girl? Ryan nodded. Aizawa leaned back. Do you know what you want to do? Ryan hesitated before shaking their head. You know, this is going to make things very difficult for you. UA isn't exactly built for the situation. I won't tell you what to do, or I won't tell anybody else, but you need to start thinking about your future. Get some rest and we'll talk soon. It wasn't much, but it was something. As they left Aizawa's office, Midoriya squeezed Ryan's hand. Well, that went well. Better than any of them expected anyways.